So fit check for today. It's an outfit I've worn a few times. If you're new here, sorry, we do fit checks here. So I've worn this dress quite a few times. This is like this slip dress. It's a little bit tapered in the center, but frankly, it's a little big on me. And then I have it with fishnets, and I'm wearing my Gucci loafers. This is actually fitting with the theme of the video, you could say, because this is definitely not an outfit that I would have worn before Pluto crossed my ascendant. This is not really focusing, but it's this sparkly dress and then fishnets and my Gucci like loafer shoes. I am going to my second night of the My Chemical Romance concert, which also happened to be something that came to me more or less, that genre of music when I was 16, 17, 18, and Pluto crossed my ascendant. So I've decided to do a series of videos on planetary transits, so you guys have an idea of what happens when that is happening in your chart or in the sky, because there's so many, and I feel like it goes back to my early YouTuber days when I definitely had an archive of content that I built up that no one knew about until people wanted that content, and then having all that library of content definitely blew up and was very helpful. So the first transit that came to mind to document was Pluto crossing my ascendant, because that was basically the transit that led to me being me. So we can define Pluto, define the ascendant, and define what this transit basically means. Pluto is the planet of death, transformation, crises, psychological processes, ups and downs, extremes. I think of it as a planet of crises and transformation. It's overused and it's a cliche, but I think that when things are really cliche, there's generally a reason, and I'm just a big fan of the basic. Like, if it's basic and cliche, there's probably some value to it. Sure, analyze the value, but like, I fucking love going after normal beauty standards that appeal to me, eating the food that everyone likes. Like, I don't know, I'm just a fan of that. Maybe it's just the Leo and me being really basic. So Pluto crossing someone's ascendant, which is also known as the specific degree of the rising sign, or the entry into the chart. Basically, if you look at your chart and you see AS, that stands for ascendant, and that is the degree of your rising. That was rising over the eastern horizon when you're born. So that represents the entrance to your chart, your personality, your character, who you are in the chart of your entire life, because the chart is not all about you. It's about your life, which incorporates you in it, but is not just you and like your personality. Like, that is the first house. The rising sign is you and your personality. The rest of the chart might be people, places, things, parents, friends, relationships, work, money, etc. So Pluto, which is a planet of transformation, crises, and drama, crossing someone's ascendant is usually the most transformative, psychologically intense, and challenging transit of their entire life. It's rare that people get to experience this, because Pluto takes 248 years to orbit around the entire zodiac, so it's pretty rare that you're going to have a rising sign that will have Pluto cross it, because let's say you live to like 70, 80, that's only, that's only going to be around a fourth of a third to a fourth of the population. So it is fairly rare. It's not too uncommon, but it is rare. And as a Capricorn rising, I went through this given that Pluto's in Capricorn. So anytime Pluto is in a sign, everyone with that rising sign is going to experience the psychological transformation in their own chart during that period. If people ask me for the degree range, it's usually within about 3 degrees that it's really potent and really relevant, but this happens basically immediately when Pluto enters your first house, and it's in the background until it approaches your ascendant. Because anytime a planet enters a whole sign house in your chart, that energy is then in that area of life. But it's not until it really gets within 3 degrees, I would say, that it's in an engagement and really, really relevant to a visceral degree. So when Pluto crosses your ascendant, it's usually the most intense psychological transformation and identity transformation of your entire life. It's not usually just, oh, I changed my hairstyle, my clothes, whatever. It's like, I am going through something that is purging out the old me. And the audio I always think of for this is like the old Taylor, like, what's that audio where it's like, where's the old Taylor, she can't come to the phone right now, why? Because she's dead or something. I hate that I can't remember that. It's really boomery and cringe, and I sound like such a, I guess, old Zoomer rather than like a 14-year-old Zoomer right now, because I'm 24. I just turned 24 in August. And Pluto crossed my ascendant in 2017 to 2019 were the pretty exact hits of it. I graduated from high school in 2017, and side note, some fucking idiots on some weird astro forum were accusing me of lying about my age because they found pictures of me graduating from middle school in 2013 and thought that I was graduating from high school there. Shut the fuck up. Like, I don't have time for that. Whatever. Ironically, I would not have been able to say that in such a forthcoming way had Pluto not crossed my ascendant, and I will insert pictures into this of what I looked like before Pluto crossed my ascendant and after. But when you see the transformation that I went through, you can kind of tell that this is not just an aesthetic switch. I did not go just from golden, long, curly-haired, tanned, like Texan popular kid wannabe to emo, goth, emaciated, like Tim Burton character for no reason. It's usually a time when the old fake self appears fake. It's not something that you were necessarily intentionally doing, but you then realize that the old self is a malfunctioning version, or is just not the true architecture of what you feel internally. This can happen very suddenly, and it can be very uncomfortable. And Pluto crossing the ascendant is not usually someone else in your life dying or all your money getting taken away, unless it's getting taken away because you changed the way that you interact with the world and so you lose your job or something. But it's usually something within yourself that leads to an intense change of your personality, your aesthetics, and your persona while still staying true to you. What I like to say about people changing is many people change horizontally, few people change vertically. And what I mean by that is that often people progress in the same manner that they always do. They improve in their strengths and they get weaker and more problematic in their weaknesses. Few people actually improve upon themselves in a way that increases their character, increases their tenacity, increases what they can support in the world. And I think Pluto crossing the ascendant is one of the closest transits to at least a diagonal change. Like, maybe it's not all wholly like you went up and really changed vertically, but it can be a time when you really, really have to like grow up. And it's not Saturn crossing the ascendant where it's growing up because you have a responsibility on your shoulders and you're now like, okay, I really have to suck it up and stop my upper lip from quivering. It's more so like you're disgusted by looking at yourself in the mirror and feel an emotional need to see something different. Like the character in you must change. And I feel like I had an extremely visceral experience of this. The first hit of Pluto crossing my ascendant exactly was as I was graduating from high school, I believe. No. It was like January. It was early 2017, and that was my last semester at high school. And I remember that was the first semester when I wasn't doing sports, and I didn't actually gain any weight or anything like that, but I looked in the mirror and was like, I need to start getting much more into fitness. Like, I miss not doing sports. Okay, we're good. I realized that when I stopped doing sports and started doing acting only, I didn't like the way that I felt in my body, and I was so young and so thin and like didn't really need it's not like I was working out to lose weight, but I felt really gross. And I was someone that growing up was always very into aesthetics, plastic surgery, models, fitness. I was like 17, 18 being like, I like my gonial angle, like of my jaw. Like I knew these weird things, or like I was like 17, 18 being like, oh, that celebrity had a blepharoplasty. Like I was just that weirdo. I remember being 6 and being really into The Swan, which was a reality TV show that showed plastic surgery before and afters, and these women competed. And frankly, I don't think it should have been taken off the air as quickly as it was, because it could have been done in a fairly neutral way and gotten backlash, obviously. But like, I just look at things really neutrally. So January was when I suddenly was like, I really want to start crafting my body and being intentional about working out. And then May was the second hit, I believe, exactly. And that's actually when I got a rhinoplasty septoplasty. And I think it's so funny when I see these celebrities saying that they had a broken nose or a deviated septum and don't mention that almost every septoplasty is going to be a rhinoplasty too. Like if you're functionally improving the nose, they're probably going to make some aesthetic changes alongside that. Every aesthetic change has to be functional, and every functional change has to be aesthetic. Like, there's no way to get around it. If you're straightening out a deviated septum, you're still gonna have to move some cartilage around. Like, they're not mutually exclusive, nor should it be looked down upon. And I remember my entire life, I'm tying my shoe, that's why I'm looking down. I'm in these Gucci ones. I'm really into these, they're cute. I remember my entire life just being like, I really am okay with the way I look, but goddamn, I feel like my nose should be sharper. Like, everything about my face, body is pretty sharp, except my nose has this little, like, rounded, like, bulbous tip. It wasn't anything anyone commented on, but May was when I got my nose job. And it wasn't, if I can do a whole video on that, honestly, like, just the lack of pain, it didn't hurt, it was just frustrating because I have such thin skin that bruises so easily that I had huge bruises for literally 6 months. It was so bad. My doctor had never seen anything like it, but I felt fine. I literally didn't need any painkillers. I'm just like, I look like a fucking mess, but I feel fine, and I'm at the gym, I'm at yoga, just with huge bruises. It was whatever. That second hit was not a shallow decision. I felt so much more authentic when I got that done, and it is such a good example of, like, cosmetic alteration that is in so the right place. Like, I felt so much more like me, and honestly, I want to go back and see my doctor and just ask about, like, 5 years later, 5 years later, basically, what he thinks about it, because I had to go to New York right after. Like, I moved to New York 3 months after, so there was no 6-month check-in. We did check-ins, like, virtually, but I wanted to see it in person. I'm very, very happy with the result. It looks very natural. If I'm honest, I love the look of perfect unnatural noses, like, think Bella Hadid, like Cindy Kimberly, that kind of thing. Not that those would be correct for my face. Specific millimeter differences are important for every face, so it's not as if I would come in with someone else's nose. But I do want to come in and be like, yo, is there anything else you would be like this? That stuff excites me. It's the only procedure I've ever had done, like, at all. Like I said, I've gotten Botox, which I need to go back and get again because it's worn off. Botox is, like, not a procedure. It's so minor. It's not filler. Botox paralyzes the muscle. It does not change your face structure. And I'm very happy with how it looked on my face. It just evened out little micro wrinkles. It was so cute. And then I have half a syringe of filler in my lip, which also completely went away. There was so little difference that I'm going back also to get half a syringe more, just so I can have a little bit poutier in the center. But I'm interested in actually a lip flip, where they remove a few millimeters underneath your nose and stitch it back up, and it lifts your lip up. I need to have a consultation, though, because I don't know if I'm a good candidate, because I already have tooth show on repose. So when I just, like, let my mouth hang slightly open and do like I feel so cringe for doing that, my upper teeth show a little bit, and that's a characteristic of, like, youthfulness and generally good jaw structure. So I do have my tooth showing, and if I lift it up too much, it could cause just, like, I look like my teeth, they would be kind of weird. So I do want to make sure I'm the right candidate fit for it, but it could prevent me from needing lip filler, because it would just, like, lift it up that little pouty bit that I don't really care about. I'm not getting lip filler for, like, huge Kylie Jenner lips. I just like the poutiness in the center. I usually go for, like, the Russian look, which is, like, the center or whatever. So my nose job was my second hit of Pluto crossing the ascendant, and that was so important, and that was just such a good feeling. Getting, like, I'll never forget getting that cast off and looking at myself and being like, that might have been the most dopaminergic moment of my life, which is that moment of getting the cast off. And I was so happy with it, and I was so myself, and the swelling doesn't go down for a year. So if you look at pictures of me for my first year at NYU, you'll notice that the tip of my nose looks more turned up. That's because it was swollen, and so it, like, went up a little boxier. It looked cute, honestly, but now my nose is turned up slightly, but very straight. I wouldn't say very straight. It's very natural. Like, no one looks at my nose and thinks I have a nose job. I mean, maybe some of you might be like, I like the nose, so I think so, but it's not a nose job nose. I don't have the bridge coming in. A lot of celebrities overdo it with shaving down the sides here, and, like, Bella Hadid's a good example where her bridge is collapsing a little bit, and so that's not something you want, and I don't have that at all. In fact, I still contour my nose to look smaller, not out of insecurity, but out of the makeup looking good when I do that. So that was the second hit, and Pluto on the ascendant can be aesthetic changes, like I said, but it's usually from a much more deep, intense place than just dyeing your hair. And that first change of embarking on an aesthetic journey, I think, was the first time in my life I remember it, because I remember Pluto crossing my ascendant, and I remember years earlier I told my parents about what was probably going to happen, which was, I don't know what I'm going to do, but like this is really intense. Because during that time as well, I had eclipses on my sun. There was a lot going on that was really intense in my chart. It was really difficult. You can look at my chart if you're interested. I won't get into it here. But I remember telling my parents, like, I don't know if I'll survive, jokingly. And then ironically, I'll get into it, but like I literally was suicidal during that time. So that was the first hit, was me deciding to aesthetically embark on a refinement journey. And looking back, it felt like a loss of innocence, because looking in the mirror when you're young has no evaluation. And suddenly I remember looking in the mirror and feeling just an incredible amount of like, we need to fix this. Like, this must be, you need to start like working out. And like I said, it wasn't really a numerical or like a weight loss thing, but it was this is not up to standards, like very Virgo, like this is just not up to standards. And it's when I started learning a lot more about physique and bodybuilding and all ways of like bulk cutting cycles in order to manipulate the body. And thankfully that knowledge has served me very well, because I'm able to target certain muscle groups and improve upon my physique intentionally. But like I said, it felt like a loss of innocence. And I think that's what Pluto on the ascendant really represents, is like going down into the underworld and quite a loss of innocence. In a psychological purge. Like, it felt so. This was also when I started dyeing my hair dark. So I played around with low lights and like a reverse ombre and some dark red when I was 16 and Pluto was approaching my ascendant. It was not until I was 17 and then further when I was 18 when I dyed my hair black. And this was a big deal because I knew that if I did it, it would never go back to blonde the way it had been. Like, my hair was a light brown, golden blonde color that got light really easily in the sun because it has super reddish undertones. I have very golden undertones. I tan easily. I don't have olive skin per se, but I don't have the Scandinavian like pink tone skin. It's very neutral. And like right now I have a tan. And I don't particularly like it, but because I don't like I like the contrast with pale skin on my body. This feeling was like, I don't even know how to describe it more overtly than it needed to change right now. Like, I needed a transformation. And I had always wanted a nose job. I told people throughout my life about this. And so that was scheduled the day after I graduated from high school. I remember, this was so funny. I remember on my graduation night, there was a guy that I thought was really cute, but he was so much more popular than I was. And I think I made out with him when I was in Cabo. I'm not going to say his name. He definitely doesn't remember me. I think I made out with him when I was in Cabo. But, like, we were seniors in high school, and, like, people didn't really sleep with one another. At least, like, it wasn't casual. At least I didn't. I didn't sleep casually with anyone at all. Oh my God, no. I had, like, 2 boyfriends in high school, but, like, that was, like, no. But he invited me over that night, and I remember having to say no because I was like, I have to be at the hostel at 5 a.m. for a nose job. And like, it just felt so fucking like Texas private school, whatever. But I will always remember that because he never responded. He left me on red. I guess, how do you respond to that? Like, whatever. I wonder how you're doing. I hope you don't have a dad bod because you were cute in high school. I'm not going to say who this was. You definitely don't remember me. The third hit of Pluto crossing my ascendant was that fall of 2018. That would have been 2017. No, 2017. It was fall of 2017. My grandmother died. And by this time, I was already dressing very emo. Like, I went from the black hair, and then suddenly, I had always liked red, but I was never wearing mainly red. Like, I would incorporate it a lot. But then it was like all red, black, white. And I still had some just black, white outfits, but I usually had red lipstick on during them. But like, I was fully, you could tell that like I was emo. And it was not just me listening to that music in my own bedroom. Because during high school, as soon as Pluto entered my ascendant, actually it entered my first house in 2008, so I would have been 10, so it's not really fair. But as soon as I entered high school and Pluto was like nearing closer, like within 5 degrees, that's when I found Pierce the Veil. And it wasn't just like Blink 182, it was like Sleeping with Sirens, Bring Me the Horizon, those groups. And still to this day, nothing makes me like happier than listening to those. Like, honestly, this just like makes my day. It's just me. And that's what it feels like, is that it's very painful, but it is a necessary transformation to become you. That is Pluto on the ascendant. But like I said, my grandmother died in December 2017, and that made me the oldest living female on my dad's side, because my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. She was the only survivor out of her whole family, and then my grandfather, who she married, they weren't from the same family, obviously, but like they were the only survivors from their families, but they married at the end of the Holocaust, basically. They decided to consider themselves married, and then they came to the U.S. When she died, it wasn't that sad of a death, I'd say, because she was so old. She lived such a memorable life. Everyone loved her so much and knew that she was fading away. She was just old. Like, there was no particular problem. I believe she died in her sleep, from what I understand. So it wasn't like of course it was sad, but it was not a shocking, tragic death. It was a celebratory thing, but it did mean that there was a heaviness knowing that, like, I am literally the oldest woman on my dad's side. On my mom's side, I have my sister, but I don't talk to my mom. I haven't talked to her since I was 17, and actually, now that I think about it, that would have been also Pluto very close to my ascendant, where I left my mom's and I never went back. And there was no big actually there was. I remember I left crying and I was like, I'm done. And then I saw her at my brother's birthday party a few months later, and that was so awkward. I've never felt more scared in my life. Like, just the scare of growing up with someone that's violent and then seeing them as an adult is like, I shouldn't be feeling this, but like, it's just so bad. So that was also this time. So I stopped living with my mom, and then a year later, when Pluto was still in my ascendant, because Pluto moves so slowly, that's going to be like a 3-year journey of this, at least. There was a heaviness knowing that, like, I felt like there was responsibility on my shoulders to be great, and it was very alarming, like, all of a sudden to be like, you are literally the only woman on this entire side of your family. It was a little weird, too, because I have a sister, but she's not related to my grandmother. My mom didn't have any grandparents alive during my life, so that was a lot of heaviness, and also it was during that first semester of college that I transferred out of Tisch. I was at Tisch School of the Arts. I transferred out because I no longer felt like acting or performing was true to me, because I felt like I just wanted to die. Like, I don't know how other way to explain it. It was the most beautiful but also the most depressed time of my life. And I've never been diagnosed with clinical depression, so I'm not claiming that, but the time itself was depressed. I felt like there was nothing I had to offer, and that I had... Actually, no, that's not true. I felt like I had so much greatness, but it was never going to amount to anything, so I might as well, like, end it now. It was a very logical suicidal ideation. It was literally like, I feel as though what I have to offer will never be seen, recognized, or grow, so therefore, I just don't even want to try. I thought that I would grow up to be a struggling artist, never getting hired for shows, and that I should just not... I was on NYU for scholarship, and I didn't think that as an adult I would amount to anything, so I was worried about my financial future. Ironically, I saw my birth chart and I was still like, oh, it must be a joke. Just because my birth chart indicates like a lot of financial focus. But that was when I was also being in New York, working out so much, walking around miles. I mean, walking around as an NYU student, like, it's miles just walking from class to class sometimes. I was very thin with low muscle mass, and I didn't like the way I looked, but I remember being like, it fit my victim mentality. And people will still comment and say that I'm too thin today when I've gained like 20 plus pounds of muscle. I mean, a fat too, but like the strength training I've done to get this. So that was when I also was literally a dying emo mess. Like, I wanted to kill myself. I was the size of a stick, and I was not doing anything to change that intentionally, because I was like, no, this is what I deserve. But I said that I wanted to do something great before I killed myself. So I ended up writing a book about my experience instead. I ended up writing a book called A Prisoner of Memory, which is not about me at all. Like, the girl in it is not me. I bring in random things that I know about my life, like alcoholic mother, like things like that, but it's not about me at all. Like, there's no guy that I've ever had that relationship with. But I wrote that, and she ends up trying to kill herself. And it felt like when I released that I wanted to see how it did. And nothing really happened. Like, no one really cared because I self-published it because I didn't want to... It costs money, and, like, it's kind of hard to get people to pick it up. And nowadays, I'm just like, I'll self-publish it. But I remember during that time was when I also started yoga teacher training because it was something that felt really good in my body, and I wanted to become a yoga teacher. So I was doing, like, training classes, but not a 200-hour training until that summer of 2018. But that fall was when I was getting really into yoga, and I started taking classes that would lead me to my training. And then early 2019 was the final, or no, early 2018 was the final hit because I had the luxury of 4 hits. And that was when I embarked on a distinct weight training, strength training journey. Was like, I cannot embody a dying emo mess anymore. I was actually in Buenos Aires on a trip, and I was the frailest I have ever been because travel always takes a toll on my body. And sometimes I do, like, lose weight, water weight, whatever, because of dehydration and also, like, not being able to, like, eat, like, if I'm really nervous on planes, etc. Not huge, but, like, the fluctuation will be notable. And I remember looking in the mirror there, and it was kind of like how I had done 2 years earlier, mainly, 1 year, 2 years earlier. I remember looking in the mirror and being like, this has to change. Like, you can't look like a 5-year-old boy. And so I did start getting into weight training and started learning about, like, bulking cycles that I could do comfortably so that it was like a ongoing process. And that was the final change of, like, no more victim mentality. It was really painful because it was this... Yoga, like, I would get up at 5:30, teach a 6:30 a.m. yoga class, go to the NYU gym, weight train, go to my 9:30 class, have class until, like, 5 intermittently. I'd probably have, like, 3 classes a day, but, like, all throughout the day. Get back, do my astrology readings, my work, and it was, like, I grew up into such a powerhouse during that time. But the initial catalyst of that was Pluto crossing my ascendant, changing my identity, because so much of my childhood was just avoid getting hit and just avoid mom, like, hurting you, that there wasn't really a lot of chance for true Maren to come out. My personality came out in bits and pieces, but there was a lot of awkwardness around me. I wouldn't say that I was ever awkward, because when you grow up in a family that is so broken and strange, you learn social agility. Like, I don't have social anxiety, I'm not socially awkward. If I've ever said that in a previous video, I don't know if I have, but I might have said it to be trendy or something, because I often don't want to see people, but I'm extroverted, but I just don't often want to see people. Like, I like sweet things, I often don't want to eat a sweet thing, which is how I now understand that I can be extroverted but an INTJ. Throughout that period, I became a mirror for what I thought that I should be, because it would make me happy instead of just doing what makes me happy. And little bits and pieces of me would come out when I was like 14, 15, 16, and really Pluto was starting to get closer to my ascendant. Like, pierce the veil. When I listened to 100 Sleepless Nights, it clicked. 100 Sleepless Nights was literally the moment. And it was accidental. I didn't mean to listen to it. That and If You Can't Hang by Sleeping with Sirens. I used to play those in my friends' cars, pretending that I was joking with them to scare them, but I really wanted to listen to that music. And it's kind of similar to how I used to always talk about, like, very pretty guys with long hair, and then be like, oh, they look like a girl, like, in a derogatory way, but, like, I really thought that guys who looked like women, or not look like women, but, like, had the long feminine hair, and, like, Harry Styles-esque was so cute. And now it's like, I can say that very proudly. Like, I love guys with long hair that are super tall and noodly. So that was when bits and pieces of me started to come out, and the transformation of 2017 to 2019 was when the full here I am really happened. It was very psychologically painful. Like I said, it was the most beautiful, but also the most difficult time of my life. It was where the highlight of my day was waking up at 5:30, walking to the subway, listening to the philosophy podcast, and learning something new. And that's when I switched to studying philosophy, because I felt like I now wanted to study the world that I was both planning to leave but wanted to feel some beauty about. Like, I literally thought I was going to kill myself. It was the plan, but I wanted to write a book first. And then I had an idea for a second book, so I was like, okay, Bad Flower, second book. What got me out of not killing myself was literally yoga and yoga teacher training, was seeing that I was really good at something. Like, if I needed to do something in my life, I could have just been a yoga teacher. I never really thought I would end up as that, because financially it's not too feasible, and I would have had to depend on some guy or something, and I just don't, I'm never, there's, like, I'm not even against women who do that, like, do your own thing, harvest, but, like, I just don't have that ever show up in my life, so it's not really a thing. During Pluto crossing my ascendant was also when, during high school, I had 2 boyfriends, like, very briefly for, like, 2 weeks each, maybe. But I knew going into it that I was just entertaining immaturity, and that's when I basically just stopped talking to guys and men altogether, because it's very rare, and I know some of my good friends are going to be like, except for me, and I'm like, yeah, except for you guys, but it's very rare that I just find any reason to speak to men about non-business things, like, very rare. It's very rare. And it's funny because in the world I live in, I am surrounded by mostly men in, like, finance, etc. But it's rare that I like to stylize it as, like, I'm fine operating in a male-dominated environment, because it means that there's a lot of just, like, masculine, straightforward energy. But my close friends are all females, pretty much, except for, like, the few guys that you know who you are. But generally, I don't really entertain men. I don't really know. Like, I just don't want to. And that was the period when I decided on that. Very, very specifically. Like, the switches were very much part of what identity feels true to me during this time, because it's a last fucking hurrah. Like, this is a last ditch effort to what is Maren. Like, if I'm gonna go out, might as well try to be me before I go out to see what me is like. And that included dressing like this, you know. The hair always had to be big. The Leo stellium always wanted to be closer to God. But the tattoos, like, oh my God. And I remember wishing that like, when I was early, like 14, 15, I remember wishing that I could gain weight easily so I could have, like, much bigger boobs, because I've always had not, like, big boobs. You can't really see because this top is, like, tight. It's not that my boobs are big. I'm not saying that so all the actual big boob girls don't come for me, but I have a very small rib cage, so people have accused me of getting a boob job because I have very, like, perky, like, my boobs fill my entire chest. There's no, they fill my chest. And actually, if you measure them technically in, like, a 27 double D or something, which ends up being, I just buy 30D, 32D, it's fine, like, whatever. Because of that, I remember being like, oh my God, like, I really want to be, like, this curvy, like, gain weight, swims, like, Sports Illustrated kind of model-esque. And then when I got to, like, that working out phase, I really did not like my boobs. Not out of judgment. I was just like, oh, do I want a reduction? Now I'm very happy with just overall proportions. I'm like, we good, just stay healthy. We got to a good, I guess, middle ground of the mindsets, and now I feel like I'm just doing so well physically, and I've never had physical issues, like, I've never had chronic issues or anything like that, but I have had, like, I don't know, I guess you could say times when I wore my body thin due to overly working out, and I could feel the fatigue, and so I'm just very happy to be stable after traveling, which also reeks on your body. This was a very long, drawn-out way of analyzing this, but I guess from me, you're not going to just get a checklist, a cookbook. You're going to get the actual application. So when Pluto's crossing your ascendant, it can be a very visceral transformation that may not be as intense as mine, but given I have Neptune on the ascendant, it involved beauty and glamour as well. So you can look at the sign of your ascendant, the aspects that Pluto's making in your chart altogether, to see a little bit more of what's happening. But it's usually a very drawn out, long, slow purging of an old identity in order to painfully come into something new. When I say painful, I don't mean to scare you or have it be bad. I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's a beautiful, like, rebirth. Like, did you hear my story? I said it was the most beautiful, but also the most challenging time. Actually, no. Most challenging time of my life was when you crazy social justice leftist bitches were at my door, based on bullshit, trying to get me out of my apartment, February 2021, which is also a gnarly time. Sometimes I want to do the astrology of my cancellation. Maybe I will, because I saw that coming and I was like, but didn't, like, that was the time when I actually, like, had the gun. But I'll do another story, I guess, on that, those transits, because that was much more, this was slow, drawn out, I want to leave my body, that was like, we need to nuke. Like, we need to abort mission. Like, wish the sperm had not reached the egg. I'll do anything to leave the Earth. Like, that was so bad. But Pluto crossing the Sun, I said, was the most long, drawn out, psychologically challenging transit I've gone through. But it might be my favorite. I would not have these tattoos if it weren't for that. I would not have come into philosophy if it were not for that showing it. So if you have the luxury of Pluto crossing your ascendant, it's so hard in the moment and it can feel like you're never going to get out of that tunnel vision, but know that it does, like you will. It'll be okay. And if you're born with Pluto on the ascendant, it can show that you go through these transformations throughout your life of demanding authenticity from yourself. Like, you're not someone that can stay in one aesthetic, stay in one character trait focus. You usually transform at a rate and density much faster than your peers. Not that you were like holier than thou, but you'll notice that you're accelerating and gaining information and feel, an old soul is not right, but you feel like you have a bird's eye view, and you likely went through many aesthetic phases and continue to, and people will be like, you look so different than you did back whatever. There's some celebrities, I don't know off the top of my head, but I remember when I was looking at this transit a couple months ago, celebrities with Pluto on the ascendant are the kind where, like, in different pictures posing lighting, they're accused of all these different surgeries, but like if you actually look at it, it's like, oh, color contrast, or like different things that are just silly. But Pluto on the ascendant is the perpetual transformer and someone that is always striving for more authenticity. Your bullshit filters and your intensity to demand authenticity for others is unparalleled. And I sympathize with you because of going through this transit once. Of course, it's not going to be this difficult your entire life. It's going to be more just a constant state of being that is not wholly this challenging. But it is something to be aware of as a defining part of who you are. And for everyone with late degree Capricorn ascendants going through it right now, bless your heart. Actually, that's meant as a fuck you in the South. Like, truly bless your heart. I don't mean it as a fuck you. And then Aquarius ascendants, I guess, get ready. I mean, do get ready. If you're a Sag ascendant, you also went through it. Scorpio ascendant. I mean, if you're alive right now and you have like Scorpio through Capricorn, you've been through it. But my camera's overheating. I see the little notification. I really hope I didn't show my, I hope I didn't flash anyone during this time, because these fishnets are not that, whatever. I'm very happy to be wearing them though, because had Pluto not crossed my ascendant, I would still be in basic pastels and chevron shit. And this is much more me. So, I'm sad that the blonde hair and the goldenness is gone. I need to get going. So actually the bag that I'm wearing to My Chemical Romance again tonight is this. Gerard Way is beautiful and just quite an Aries energy. Like, he was last night when I went to the concert at Barclays Center, because I went there last night with my friends, but tonight I'm going alone because I am fading New York Fashion Week to go to My Chemical Romance. What was I gonna say? Oh, last night he was like jumping around the stage being like, I'm 45 and doing this, where are you fuckers? And I was like, you're 45? You have the agility of like 30 and maybe a 20-year-old. Anyway, I need to go. I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you want any more transit explanations and story times, and which ones that you would like if you think that I have undergone it. So take care and see you in the next one.